Hello, everyone, and thanks for joining us. And thanks very much, Panjali, and to Brendan Dunford as well, and Sharon. So, my background is in conserving heritage varieties of apples and finding old orchards and identifying those varieties and grafting them. So, part of that is actually planting young trees and making sure that they survive, because through grafting, um, you can really save old trees, and you can guarantee that they'll um, survive because it's part of our history. And also, as well, actually, some of the trees that you're growing were actually originally propagated from trees on their last legs, say Ballyvaughan seedling, custard scarlet, maybe Irish pitcher. Now, some of these trees actually still exist, and more of them, say, would have been cut down, and it's only for seed savers and say Tommy and Anisha Hayes that they found those trees in time, that they've been saved. So I suppose one of the things that I'm passionate about is you're not just planting an apple tree, but there's a whole history and story behind that that tree. Say you might have 50 trees of Ballyvaughan seedling, but that say that particular tree in your garden goes back to an original tree, and that's I suppose that's the most important thing about conservation. And I was very fortunate that I've been involved in Sea Saver since I was maybe about 10 or 11, because I used to bring apples to them and I'd go visit the orchards and I was enchanted. Um, and then Cormac Griffith taught me grafting. Some of you might know Cormac, and Tommy Hayes taught me grafting as well. And I worked with Sea Savers back in 2022 for a year, and I became actually involved in the Harris Corner. I might have met some of you, and so what I'd like to basically um, go through with you is a bit on pruning and also planting young apple trees. I know that you would have received, is it? Um, I think you got about 10 trees, maybe, if I'm right, and more or less you've planted those, and hopefully they're growing well now. And I met quite a few of you as well, and I was delighted that the trees are growing well. But basically, I want to take you through pruning young apple trees, say from 1 year old trees right up to say 4 years and beyond. Then the second thing, as I said, I'd like to show you a bit about basic maintenance of the trees planting, and also I've some very good resources which I'll share with you, and also you'll have a chance to read more into. And then at the end, say after the question and answer, I'd like to show you a bit about two projects I'm working on with orchard mapping. So we'll get to that towards the end. So what I'll start off with is there's three resources we have on the Irish Sea Savers website. They have very good information about creating your orchard and planting the trees. So I'll show you a bit in that. Then the RHS website is actually one of. Am I sharing my screen now?
No, you're not. No.
Okay. That's it. Yeah. Entire screen. No. Okay. Hello. Can you see this okay? Can you see my
Not
entire
yet.
screen?
I think I see myself, but is that the same for you, Sharon? I think it hasn't clicked. It's taking time, I think. Oh yeah, now we can see oh, it's gone off again. I think I just about, yeah, you went to the
Oh,
Irish Seed Savers webpage and then I think you stopped sharing then, did you, Killian?
It could be, um, yeah, I did, yeah. We might give it a couple of seconds. Is this up now?
I think there's just a bit of delay. Let's hold on a second and see if it's appearing.
It's also not in
Yeah.
full screen size.
Yeah.
Okay. It's probably just maybe a small setting in it. Entire screen and my audio, so it's not. Oh, okay. We mute. Now, how's that?
Yeah, I can see. I think we are seeing your screen, and now you. Yeah, we can see the web page. Yeah.
Oh, brilliant. So it's not, everything is displayed okay.
Yeah.
I just have to just the side screen here. I'll have to okay.
I think if we switched off our videos, would that help? I
If we
wonder.
switched off our video.
I think I have to I just have to
minimize it.
I have to minimize the screen. Yeah. Is that okay now?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, brilliant. So sorry about that now. As I was saying, I have two resources I'm going to take you through. And with kind of simple kind of guidelines, simple instructions in terms of planting the trees, and also in terms of pruning. The RHS have a fantastic resource online about pruning apples. Basically, it shows you how to prune 1-year-old trees called a maiden, and I'll take you through that. Now, this is actually the RHS have a fantastic book on pruning apples, and this is an extract from it, and it's available in Seed Savers as well as online. So, what I'd like to show you in terms of planting an apple tree. So, when you get a 1-year-old tree, it's called a maiden, and you use a method of pruning called formative pruning, and that establishes the shape. No. So what you have is a maiden whip that's one stem, but a feathered maiden it has side shoots growing. Then often you'd have a 2-year-old tree. So basically, when you're pruning, you want to you have 3 types of heights of a tree that you'd be pruning. You'd have a bush, which is a smaller size, which would be about 2.5 foot above the ground. You would prune. Then you have a half standard, which is a slightly taller tree. So the central trunk would be about say 3 foot high. Then a full standard would be about 5 foot in height. But I show you the basic pruning. So here we go. How to prune new apple and pear trees. So this would be a stem. You know, when you receive your 1-year-old apple tree through the Hare's Corner, and also say if you were to buy a bare root from Seed Savers. So here you can see you would prune about 2.5 foot from the ground, and you would have around 4 buds below it, because those buds will actually grow into stems, into branches. So this stimulates growth, because say the more you prune a length of growth, it encourages growth hormone. But the whole idea with formative pruning is basically you're forming the shape of the apple tree. So now a feathered maiden is basically when there's small side branches growing out of a single stem. So when you buy a bare root in Sea Savers, this is basically called a maiden whip. Now, so it's about 2.5 foot above the ground. That's where you prune, and below this, you would have around 4 to 5 buds, let's say, and that'll grow into new branches. Now, so this is pruning a feathered maiden or 2-year-old tree. So you can see here, I'll have to zoom in for you. It's fairly easy. It's simple enough if you. And I have this resource to share with you. So you can see number 1 here. These are the new branches that have grown. You have 3 of them. Then number 2 here. So this is a typical 2-year-old tree. You would prune, say, above say 3 branches. So select 3 or 4 strong outward growing side shoots. They're called laterals, the side shoots. And so the top, as far as the highest one, is about 2.5 foot from the ground. So actually, an interesting thing is when you look down at the tree, it should be like an upside down umbrella, and that's called a whorl. So with a feathered maiden, you'd cut the main stem back to above the selected side shoots. Yeah, so that there are 3 or 4 good side shoots below. So we can see that here. There's 1 branch, 2 branches, 3, but you could have, say, 4 branches. And then you shorten your side shoots by about half to 2/3. Now this is formative pruning. So you can see here, this is, say we've 3 branches below, and this has been shortened about half. So say our step 1 was we selected these, which say lower branches, 3 to 4 lower branches. Then 2, we pruned above those branches. Then we shortened those laterals by about half. Now, so then year 2 pruning. So I hope that kind of makes sense. Then year 2 pruning is you're selecting, say, 8 to 10 of the side shoots. We can see that's these ones here, like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So yeah, about 8 of the side shoots. Now you shorten them by about 1/3 to half, and that actually goes usually when you're pruning back growth of the previous year's growth, it's about 1/3. So we can see we had from last year we had 1 branch, 2, 3 branches, and you have these side shoots which began to grow. So you shorten those. Now, yeah, you shorten them about 1/3 to half, pruning above a healthy outward facing bud. And then if there's any crossing branches, you'd remove those. So you basically need to have an open center. So with a bush tree, that would be, you'd have a kind of an open center. It's described as a goblet shape. Okay, then year 3 pruning. So on the main branches, you cut back the new growth produced last year, by a quarter, or say even depending on the strength of the branch, it could be a third to sometimes even a half. So you leave the side shoots from the main branches unpruned, unless they're actually crossing. Then after 4 years, you would basically maintain the shape of the tree. And there's a second actually link which would describe spur pruning and also pruning tip-bearing trees. That's something I'll have to discuss with you as well, if the variety is tip-bearing or spur-bearing. So tip-bearing is when it produces apples on the tips of the branches. Spur-bearing is it produces all along the stem, but I'll get to that in a minute because there's different ways of pruning them. So I'll just get back to this image. So just to clarify that with you again, this is a 1-year-old maiden whip, and about, say, 4 buds above. If you want to have 4 stems, you could have maybe 5 stems. You prune above that. Then the following year, or say that season, you would have these laterals grow, and then if this is a 2-year-old tree, you would prune. If that's a 2-year-old tree you just bought, now that's where you'd prune it. So you'd have 3 to 4 branches below it. So I hope that kind of makes sense. Now I'll also show you on the Seed Savers website a bit about planting the apple trees. But I also want to mention about tip-bearing varieties and spur-bearing. Now, can you hear me okay? Oh, brilliant.
Yeah, I can hear you.
Fantastic. And is the screen sharing okay?
It was. I think you have come out of the RHS.
Oh, I did, yeah.
Yeah.
So what I have here actually, in terms of pruning, this secateurs, that is a Felco, and that's fairly expensive, but that's the best secateurs for pruning, and it's supposed to last a lifetime. It's stainless steel, and this
Killian,
is.
sorry, if you don't want to share a screen, do you want to stop sharing and then we can see you in a bigger window?
Oh yes, yeah.
Yeah, thank you.
No, stop sharing.
Yeah, that's great. Thanks.
Brilliant. And
you were showing secateurs.
Yeah. Can you see me okay?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah. Brilliant. Now, these are Felco secateurs. You can buy these online. They're about maybe €60, but I'd highly recommend them. And in terms of pruning,
I think Killian is frozen. Hopefully he'll come back. I think this might be a good chance if you have questions for Killian, maybe to put them in the chat. We've already received one. Actually, even better, put it in the Q&A section. That might be a better place for your questions. Yeah, someone's asked, can we have the links he shared though, please? I think I've put the links in the chat button, but I'll put them in the Q&A section if you would like. First one was irishseedsavers.ie, second one was rhs.org.uk, fruit/apples/pruning new trees. So I might put the full link in the Q&A section as well.
There's the question there, I think, that you can answer, Pranjali, about have people been advised whether they've been approved for their trees yet? We discussed that today.
Yeah, that's coming soon. I mean, that's imminent. I think that you might hear from my colleagues within the next couple of weeks. Either way, I think the trees are going to be distributed in January and February. So, but there'll be an email coming to you soon whether you've been selected to receive them. So, thanks for your patience on that. Type answer to the. That's really great questions. Thank you,
Oh, yeah.
everyone. Sharon, maybe are you able to answer any of them?
Well, Brendan's just put up one, any reflections on where to plant and where not to. I'm not an apple tree person or a fruit tree person really, but one of the problems I've seen with a few of the Hare's Corner places is places where they're too wet. So I think you need to check how wet free draining your ground is, because they're going to need quite well drained ground. So if you want to test before you plant trees in an area, maybe dig a hole, say about 50 centimetres deep by about 50 centimetres square, pour a bucket of water in and see if the water's gone by the next day. It's a good way to see if it's going to drain quickly enough. Because there are some places where it's just the drainage isn't good enough and they're not going to survive.
Yeah, that's something we have regularly seen, isn't it? That's number one thing that's probably the one thing to avoid when planting apple trees is wet land. Chat, anyone else? Any tips for fire? Yeah, I really hope Killian is coming back. He seems to have lost his battery or connection.
Have you a number for him at all?
No. Oh, he's back. I think he's back. Fingers crossed. Hello, Killian, you're back.
I'm very sorry about that. My connection here, the cable is a bit dodgy.
Okay.
Um,
I know you were
but
going to get into planting, Killian, but I wonder whether it's a good idea because a lot of people are interested in the pruning aspect of the trees. Would you mind if we address those questions
yeah,
first? So
that would be good. So
yeah,
I have my sectors here, as I was showing you, and I have just this year's growth, which I pruned off. I also have a piece of 2-year-old wood which has fruiting spurs. Well, just 1 minute. In terms of the planting and stuff, there's good stuff on Seed Saver's website, and we can actually maybe move on to that if people have a few questions about it and get to that. But definitely, it would be good to take the questions about pruning because it actually means I can clarify anything you might be asking.
great. Thank you, Killian. I think there was a couple of questions about pruning mature apple trees. Is there any advice on people who have old orchards and where to begin pruning them if they've been sort of nothing has been done to them for years?
Okay, so with old apple trees, the restoration has to be done over the space of maybe 8 years. It's important early on not to cut too much out. Basically, what you would do, starting off in restoring old tree, you prune out dead branches and also diseased branches. Usually, sometimes you would look at old, say, very big old branches which would be crossing, and also you would be kind of bringing more light into the tree. So even stuff like a handsaw is actually very good. You can get it's the kind of jaggedy saw, that's quite good. And what I actually do is I get chalk and I'll mark off parts of a tree which I'll cut out. So you would remove, you would say, dead limbs, and if there's any kind of crossing, and then you'd let a bit of light into it. Then the following year, you would maybe, if I remember right, I'll have to maybe look it up again, but you wouldn't remove more than a fifth of a tree's growth if you're restoring it. And also then you want to let kind of light into the tree and air, because a lot of old trees, surprisingly, would have been pruned very well. Say in a traditional orchard, they would have pruned trees either as a bush type of tree. So say you see 2.5 foot above the ground, that the tree will go out like this, and you'll have limbs growing out that way. And then in very old orchards, say with Brammies and stuff, they had standard trees. So that's the central trunk would go up maybe about 5 foot before it branches out. So with old apple trees, it's also important as well that you look at the balance of the tree, so that, say, if you cut one limb off, that it's not going to totally fall down. Then the following year, there's some very good resources as well. A friend of mine called Bob Lever in Norfolk, he specializes in restoring what's called veteran apple trees. So a veteran apple tree is an apple tree over 100 years old, and he has some very good videos and stuff, and I'll share those as well.
Okay, thanks, Killian. If you can put the name down in the chat button, that'll be great.
Yeah.
Jillian is asking, I heard about tying weights onto branches so that branches can grow down instead of up. Have you tried this before? I've never seen it done and wondering if it's a good or
Actually, yeah,
terrible idea.
it's actually quite interesting. Well, when a tree is young, you can actually, while it's say during the growing season, while it's in active growth and the branches are flexible, you can use this type of it would be rubber type of kind of band, and Cormac Griffith actually he showed me, because he was training a tree. So for example, like, say if this is green growth, current year's growth in the tree, you could slightly tie it down a small bit, and it would train the shape, because in an apple tree, say if it's young, you don't want the tree to be growing up with the angles too close, say like this, because what would happen eventually when the tree's older, the branches can split and break and fall apart. So that's why they'd usually be, what would you say, at an angle. Like if that's a young tree, they'd be kind of a bit like that. I would say lower, about that angle. Then imagine the tree. So you wouldn't want, like, if that's a young tree, then branches will be more prone to breaking. So if you have a young tree and you're looking down at it, the branches kind of radiate out. So yeah, that's interesting in terms of training branches with kind of tying them and stuff. Yeah. Any more questions, actually?
There's quite a few to do with timing.
Yes.
Oh, I see some here now. In the chat.
And there was some on the email as well. Summer and winter pruning, what are the merits or disadvantages? What is the ideal timing for pruning
Oh,
apple
okay.
trees?
So basically, winter pruning is obviously it's undertaken when the tree is dormant, and I find it better to prune, say, around maybe early February, because sometimes if you prune this time of year now, the tree is left open to the elements. Now, in terms, I have to really highlight in pruning, there's two really important things. One is that you don't prune on a wet day, or even if there's showers, if the tree is wet, because you spread disease. So it's best on a dry day, a dry sunny day, maybe in any time between mid-late January until sometimes say early March even is fine. Now sterilizing secateurs as well. You have to use sterilizing fluid along with you'd use cotton wipes. And what you would do is obviously you would, if you're pruning back diseased wood, you'd have to prune it back to where it's healthy. So when you prune, if it has any brown, it's obviously that's disease, because canker is very prevalent. And you can spread canker between, say, from a diseased tree to a healthy tree, and you can ruin it, because you might come back in, say, in autumn, and you can see all your bad cuts. So generally, if I'm pruning, I usually would prune diseased branches. I focus on say pruning for disease separate to pruning for growth. It's just the way you have to look at a tree. So say, for example, you have a 4 or 5 year old tree, and your objective is to prune disease. Well, that's what you need to focus on. And then when it's healthy, a couple of weeks later, you can actually go back and focus on, say, encouraging fruiting and growth.
And what
So
about
yeah,
summer pruning? Is that a
now getting on summer pruning. So that's usually actually just control how vigorous a tree is. So say if you had, imagine that's a tree, and you had all this fresh green growth in the center coming out, that causes a lot of kind of congestion, and you can actually get mold on trees if it's too congested. So it's usually just to control overly vigorous growth. But as well, if it's very damp in July, sometimes when you prune, the new green growth, the bark can split a small bit. So it's really important to sterilize sectors. Again, have a bottle of surgical fluid that you get in pharmacy. But yeah, summer pruning is if growth is overly vigorous, and that's usually growth which you don't need.
Thanks, Killian. There's two questions regarding shelter. One, can you answer? Can you create shelter for orchard trees after they've been planted? And secondly, if you, what are the varieties that are better suited to kind of really exposed conditions?
Yeah. Okay. So in terms of shelter, I find hawthorn very good, because you can actually plant a hedge of it, and it's also very good for wildlife. And even when the leaves fall on the ground, it actually creates it enriches the ground. So as well, let me see. Some people would plant stuff like I think beech and stuff as well, like beech hedging. But yeah, in sea savers, I think they have they have a shelter belt of trees close to the M9 orchard. I forget what type of trees they are now, but I find hawthorn very good, because it's also very valuable for wildlife, and it's a traditional native tree. It's important to plant native.
Great.
And the second thing you'd ask me was
The varieties that are better suited for.
yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so if you're in an exposed location, often spring frosts and winds can be a real challenge to apple blossom. So choosing a late flowering variety. So Ballyvaughan seedling is very late flowering. And actually, interesting. I'm thinking in my own garden, a variety which is very good against the wind. I'm surprised is Worcester Pearmain. Worcester Pearmain is an eating apple. It's not native Irish apple, but it's commonly grown. I find Beauty Bat is very good as well, because that's a very old traditional variety. Beauty Bat. It would be one of the varieties a lot of elderly people would remember, because it ripens in August. It's like a deep red apple, and it tastes like strawberry. That's quite good. Um, Now, obviously, Ballyvaughan seedling is very good. That grows in it grows very well actually out in the field. I would also choose, in terms of trees, an M106, maybe M111 as well. The more vigorous rootstock. Let me see. Yeah, a lot of later flowering or later ripening apples actually hang well on the tree. If you ever notice that early growing apples don't last long on the tree, so they'll sometimes be blown off in a storm. Knights Templar seem to be very good in wind, so there are quite a good few. A lot of the Sea Savers ones. A Lock Tree of Wexford is fantastic. It holds its fruit very well.
That's great. That's brilliant suggestions, Gillian. Thank you.
Thanks.
Can I move on to the next one? Nicola has asked, one of our trees lost its top. Not sure what type it was snapped off in the wind. Do we prune it the same way?
Oh, you mean say a lot of the top part of the tree was snapped off?
Yeah.
Okay, well, what you would do is you could look at where, maybe establish how many buds are still left in the tree. You'd want maybe about 5 or 6 at least. Now you could bring it, just maybe you could treat it like maybe a 2-year-old tree again. So if the top was totally gone from it, you could prune it. You could prune it back down to maybe, if you have, say, 2 foot of a tree, 2.5 foot, and then because you pruned it back hard, you should probably get 3 or 4 buds might grow out, and then after that you're retraining the shape of the tree.
If it's quite an old tree, though, that's more likely to be the situation of losing a complete top on it through storm damage, possibly. So you're not necessarily going to be able to see buds.
Yeah, well, it depends if like a lot of the tree is gone, but you'd always be able to encourage a couple of new branches to grow again. I've had trees that have lost, say, with canker actually. Well, I always dig a cankerous tree up, but I've had some trees that I've had to actually cut them right down, and surprisingly, depending on the diameter of the tree, if it's a very big old tree, you could just have it kind of as a feature. But if it's a younger tree, it shouldn't be too bad to encourage it to grow again.
Great. Thanks, Gillian. I hope that answers the next question, which is a 5-year-old Kilkenny Pearmain that was badly damaged in a storm. So all I have left is a central stem of around 90 centimeters and 2 branches. How should I prune this to save the tree? I think you've answered that. Do you think, Gillian?
Oh, so there's about 90 centimeters
Yeah.
has grown up.
No, that's all he's left with, a central stem of around 90 centimeters and 2 branches.
Oh wow, that's very, yeah, that's
That's
very tall. That's actually about 3 foot. So you could bring it back down, treat it as I wonder, is there any kind of side stems on it? That would be a question. I think he said it's one central leader.
yeah,
Oh yeah, well you could actually treat it like
like a
a
2-year-old tree.
1-year-old
Yeah,
feather tree again.
yeah.
So about, if you want to train it as a bush, about a bush tree, a goblet shape, about 2.5 foot above the ground, you can prune it to a healthy bud. Then the following year, you would have about 4 branches growing out, and you can train those. So yeah, that's actually that does happen to trees, that a new central leader will grow up.
Great, thank you. Is there anything, Alec is asking, is there anything that we can plant in between our apple trees that can help keep down weeds / be beneficial to the soil?
This is an interesting one. If you look it up online, have you ever came across a food forest? It's basically you have different layers of kind of, you've levels of and heights where you would have something grown for food. So obviously up in the canopy you have the apples. Lower down you might have say rhubarb. Well, this is a concept, and it's so a food forest is often planted around an apple tree of maybe about 3 foot, and you'd have say berry bushes. But what I do with my own trees is I have in red space. I have comfrey planted around the trees at the base. I also have garlic, which I planted over the years, and I have I've mesh around my apple trees, and I graze with well, I haven't done this now, but you can graze with sheep if you have protection around your apple trees. That's a traditional method. Apart from that, you can mow the grass, and then it's important to mulch around an apple tree. You can mulch with straw, and well, then feeding you would use good manure. But the main thing with young trees is keep the grass for about maybe 2.5 foot around an apple tree. You need to keep the grass down. But mulching is more important than say feeding.
Okay, so I think that
There,
probably
there is
answers.
one question in the chat
Yeah.
about grass cuttings as a mulch.
Grass doesn't appear to be great as a mulch. From what I've read, it's not recommended, but straw is fine, because what what happens with grass is it forms this kind of mat, and it kind of it can rot back into the ground. So you're better off to maybe mow the grass and take it up. There's no harm though, say if you're mowing around the apple trees generally, and you mow it fairly often, and the lawn clippings are left around the tree in a thin enough layer that gives a small bit of nitrogen. But in terms of mulching an apple tree with lawn clippings, I probably wouldn't do it.
Okay.
You could get a second opinion on that though. But like straw is very good for apple trees, and it's recommended as well.
Great. Thank you, Killian. Is there any advice on dealing with white aphids?
Oh yeah, so white aphids would be well, they'd mainly attack during when it's hot and kind of humid. They'd attack kind of young leaves. Well, for general aphids, I've always actually used washing up liquid. Because the white aphids I think you're referring to are mealy aphids, and they basically produce this sap, which causes the leaves to kind of become diseased, and it stunts them. But there are various organic sprays and stuff. I think I don't necessarily know for the white aphids, but I know that you can get garlic sprays. Now, seaweed spray is used for feeding young apple trees, and that's actually very good in terms of promoting health. But that's interesting about the white aphids.
Yeah.
But I've always used a washing up liquid. Like, I mean, it's the diluted solution. There's a lot of recipes online, but that would be something to look into.
And I presume, I know you mentioned the straw is good. What about fallen autumn leaves around trees? Would that work as a mulch?
I haven't used it now,
Mm.
but well, selective, like you probably could use beech leaves because they appear to be quite good in terms of leaf mold and compost. But it's actually, believe it or not, if an apple tree has a bad attack of scab, say one particular tree now, it's advised to rake those leaves up, um, and say dig a hole in the ground and compost them in the ground and don't use them, because scab is an interesting disease because it exists on the leaves and the fruit, and once it goes into the ground, the leaves overwinter, and then the scab virus goes back up into um into the fruit. So it's actually recommended with a apple tree that has scab to rake those leaves up. So I found that interesting when I was
Okay.
researching organic methods of controlling it.
Okay. And Killian, would you mind telling us the name of the your friend again, who's a veteran fruit tree expert who has YouTube videos? Even if you had the name handy, I could put it in the chat button. People could Google search
Yeah, well,
for him.
I'll post this in the chat here now.
Okay.
But I'll share my screen, and Bob Lever,
Bob Lever is his name. Okay, thank
yeah,
you.
and he has a great website, veteran orchard pruning, and I can share my screen and it'll come up. No, entire screen. Yeah, he has a couple of yeah, this is it here. I'll have to post the link in for you. But it's a slow motion, or a fast motion kind of going through the stages, and I can post that into
I think I can see the channel name is
I just
Orchard
copied
People or something, isn't it?
yeah, so I just copied the link and I'll just post this in. Handy to do it now. Control V. Okay. Yeah. Stop my share a minute.
Great. Thank you, Killian.
Now the people.
Yeah,
Oh,
sorry.
sorry. Yeah.
No, I'm
Oh,
just conscious of the time and I'm wondering, should we move on to the orchard mapping perhaps? I know we mentioned we were going to talk about planting, but I think maybe it's best that we leave it for another time or we post resources on planting.
yeah. So
Would that be a good idea?
yeah, the main resources are on the Sea Savers website. They have Apple FAQs, and well, I'll be able to post the link into in a few minutes into
Yeah,
the
and inspired by
chat.
that, the Hare's Corner team has also created a simple infographic and kind of practical tips around orchard planting. If you visit theharriscorner.ie and just click on practical tips, you'll see something on orchard planting. So hopefully, for someone who's starting out or hasn't planted apple trees before, that could be a good place to start.
Interesting. I have a PDF document made up, and I have that page of yours
Okay.
about it has a bit about apple pruning, actually. Very, very
Yes,
simple apple
yes,
pruning.
yeah, yeah. But yeah,
I'd actually
there's
meant
a
to
lot of
refer to it.
there's a lot of good information out there, like you
Yeah,
said, on the Irish Seed Savers and the RHS website. So that could be a good place to start.
yeah.
There was a question about community that we got an email, and I think hopefully that'll lead into your orchard mapping project. But someone was asking, I hope that will talk about or encourage fruit tree planting in public spaces, old and new, and on community and volunteer tree wardens. So perhaps your mapping project can speak to that, Gideon.
Yeah, so basically, what I was doing as an individual was taking regions that used to have old orchards, and I went out to document the orchards, find the varieties, and photograph the trees, graph them. But I realised, like, to achieve a project to actually properly find what's surviving, you would need a group project. And what CCAvers do is a lot of people from the public come to them, and they donate varieties and trees and folklore. And it's amazing how much is still surviving. And I was just very interested as an individual myself to set up group projects. And when I looked more into it, I found out that there are similar projects being done over in England. And about 6 years ago, I set out to have a similar project in Ireland. And I actually have, I show you a couple of small things. No. This shouldn't be too slow, because I had to re-log in again, so it took me a minute to reload this down. No. If I find it here a minute. Ah, yeah, that's it. Head for it. So no. I share my screen again. And I just show you a couple of a basic overview of the project. So I have two projects I set up. One is in Clonakilty, and the second is up in Headford. Well, Headford, we're really starting that in January. But in Clonakilty, we found, believe it or not, a lot of heritage varieties in the old orchards. Like, I found old samples of Ardcarn Russet, Irish Molly, a lot of really unusual ones. Reardon's cider apple. Is my screen sharing on? Let me see. Yeah. And the volume is okay. Is that all okay?
Yeah, we can see your screen.
Now I just have to reduce this a small bit. Thanks for your patience.
No problem at all.
Now, can you see this okay?
Yes.
Okay, yeah. So I gave a talk up in Headford about heritage apple conservation. And this was, I titled it Forgotten Fruits, Rediscovering Our Local Heritage Apple Varieties. So yeah, my background, as I said, is I'm an artist, and I survey the old maps to find orchards, and I found different samples of heritage varieties like Irish Pitcher, Custard Scarlet, Bloody Butcher, Sam Young. So that is an old tree. Mainly what I want to show you is how I found the trees, and say the particular varieties, and if anyone was actually, if there's anyone up around maybe the Headford region, anywhere from, I suppose, Tuam down as far as Athenry, over as far as Claregalway, back up to maybe Ballinrobe. Now that would be the general region that I'm going doing a project in Galway. But I'll happily actually send this PowerPoint to anyone interested, and I have it in PDF format, so you'll be able to able to ring it, able to read it. It kind of has the background as well, and the importance of actually of finding these trees. So I said that, you know, the importance of finding, documenting, and preserving the old trees because of folklore and history. Yeah, can you still see this? Okay.
Yeah, it looks good. Yeah.
Oh, brilliant, great. No, yeah. So my background and inspiration, as I said, was Dr. Keith Lamb and Sea Savers. So Dr. Keith Lamb, he compiled the original, say, the first collection of heritage apples in Ireland, and his thesis actually, he collected about 57 varieties, and that inspired Sea Savers to, say, make these varieties available to the public again. It's part of what you'd call intangible cultural heritage. So I'd happily share this presentation with you. I gave this presentation during Heritage Week up in Headford. I created this presentation myself as part of Heritage Week. Now, yeah, so as I said, I'm trying to map old orchards within different regions and put them onto, like, say, onto a map. So I do actually use Google Maps and I pin locations. So I survey maps and identify places to visit, and I use a couple of resources online. Then I also use Google Maps because you can visit a location. You can drop, say, you can actually explore a location as well. So I visit the site, I document the trees, I talk to the landowners, and I take notes. I photograph the trees, I draw maps of the orchards. So then I identify the varieties, and I'd bring a few to compare against the trees in Sea Savers. And then anything interesting I return in spring and collect the graftwood. So now I think this is a Google Maps. I have a couple of funny stories. So this is a place near Tulla, and I saw an orchard on the old maps. And I put the orange man down to look over the wall. I saw 3 apple trees. So this one here is Lady Sudley. This is Grenadier. So I knew obviously when I knew that there was apple trees in that location. This is before I actually even visited the place. So that's a place near Tulla. So it's exciting actually what you find. Now, this is a place where I found a sample of Sam Young. So Sam Young is an eating apple in the Sea Savers collection, and it's a kind of a russet apple. But basically, how I found this was I looked at the old 1840s maps and I compared them against satellite imagery and the 1880s maps. And then when I visited, I identified varieties, but one particular one was Sam Young, and it's the only old sample of the tree I've ever seen in Ireland. And I'm not sure if I know some of the varieties in Sea Savers came back from Brogdale, but apart from that, like, it's important to actually know of individual trees that still survive so that they can be documented and to record the story and how valuable they are. So this is a place in Limerick, and the trees are surviving from that time. But there's a lot of interesting stories when you go and say when you document these trees. Like this farmer actually, his father didn't cut the trees down because it was unlucky. So the last few things, I won't play these videos for you now because we'd have time, but I just show you some of the images. So that's a sample of a tree, a hollowed out trunk, and that's in Limerick. Now, this is the second sample of it. Same tree again. and that's the Sam Young. Now, isn't that a beautiful tree? See the limbs, So I grafted this tree. I took quite a few grafts from it, and you can see a hawthorn growing out of the base. This is Keith Lamb's his thesis about the apple in Ireland. But the last what I want to show you is just a couple of images. So this is Bloody Butcher from Laois. A friend of mine actually brought me these apples to identify, and I recognised them from the Sea Savers collection. And I said, could you go back to a particular orchard and take photographs? So he did. And this tree existed in 2 locations in Laois, but the second location where this variety grew, Bloody Butcher, the landowner cut it down, not knowing it was a heritage tree. Now this is Custard Scarlet. This is near Queen, an absolutely ancient tree growing in the middle of an orchard. So I've been lucky that I've found samples of these original heritage varieties still growing. Now, this was the second sample of Custard Scarlet that my friend he brought to me. He brought me samples of apples to identify, and I was able to tell him this is, say, Custard Scarlet, and that's Bloody Butcher. These were just from old orchards around Laois. Irish Pitcher. Some of you would know this variety from the Sea Savers collection. It's in 6 Mile Bridge. That's it again. Some of these are videos, so that's why I'm not playing them. So I actually used the roots Irish Pitcher as a rootstock. I did a trial. Now, Castellellen in Galway, that's owned by a man called Michael Caney, and I identified a lot of the varieties in his place. Now, some of his trees are going to form part of the Headford orchard mapping project. So we have Brown Crofton and Ahern Beauty, King of the Pippins. Some of these are actually in Sea Savers collection, but they wouldn't have been collected in this orchard. They would have been somewhere else. So some of you would know Brown Crofton. That's this red brown apple here. This is a lovely photograph of that Brown Crofton tree. And I grafted quite a few of these, and I donated them to different people, as well as different groups. I've donated trees to people, but it's important to record the story behind the tree, and so you're not just planting a Brown Crofton. You're planting a Brown Crofton from Castellellen, and that tree still survives. So that's the most important thing, that these trees actually still survive despite modern land development and everything, because these trees aren't protected. So that's a sample of a cider apple. This is a red cooker called Ahern Beauty. It's actually in the Sea Savers collection, but this was on a tree which had 2 varieties grafted on it, and these trees would have been about 160 years old, maybe. This is a different variety, actually, that existed in 2 locations, one in Armagh and one in Belgooly in Cork. Now, I didn't discover these at all, but I just included them as a sample of a variety which had never been recorded before, but was discovered through surveying orchards and the DNA testing project that Sea Savers initiated a number of years ago. Now, these are just other samples. I'll send this presentation on to anyone interested. I won't delve into too much because of time, but the few people I do have to acknowledge, and it's important, is Steve Marsh and Jeremy Turkington from Sea Savers, and and also Cormac Griffith. So yeah, I think that kind of covers most things now. Now this was a lovely sample of a pear tree from Barry's orchard in Cork City. So basically, seed savers propagated all of those trees to preserve them. And that's a young grafted sample. That's in the seed savers collection now as part of conservation. Some photographs of the pear.
So, Killian, the seed savers have a system of accepting kind of if people come across old apple varieties, is that where they can go to send them for identification, or what should people do if they come across a very old looking apple tree that might be a old heritage variety?
Well, actually, interesting. Seed savers send people on to me to identify varieties, and what I usually do is I have kind of a basic few things I get people to do to pin your location on a map. Well, there's a couple of things like I'd usually get people to post me samples of apples in the post, because most of the time, about 50% of the 60% of the time, it's a fairly common enough variety, so you rule that out. Then the second would be, does it exist in the seed savers collection? So you kind of go through a whole process. Sometimes it could be a variety in the seed savers collection, and I've a good knowledge of most of the trees really, and so I'd recognise the varieties from experience. So often people who bring apples to seed savers, they often suggest contacting me, and they'd give my contact details to people.
Yeah.
But if
that's
anyone doesn't have
fantastic and
anything,
amazing. You
I'd
can
be happy
recognize
to.
identify an apple from just looking at it, identify the variety. I'm just
So
conscious of time. We've gone well past 9 o'clock. So we
okay,
might have to
yeah,
wrap it up. Sorry.
that's fine for now.
Yeah,
But
well, I might
yeah,
give Sharon
thanks
the
very much.
last question. I know she had a question or two. Sharon, if you had any last question to ask Killian before he
No, I'm fine actually, because Brendan got in and asked what two of the questions I was going to ask.
Oh, very good.
Okay. Well, thanks, Gillian. That was amazing. And there were a lot of questions, and in fairness, we probably had too many things demanded too many things of this 1 hour. So maybe there is another webinar somewhere in the future where we address all the things we didn't today. But meanwhile, if you have any kind of resources, I know you've sent some links, but we might when we upload a recording of this on our YouTube in the description, we might put in links and any other maybe a PDF of your presentation. Maybe we'll upload it to our website or something and
No, I
then
appreciate
have it
that.
available.
Do you have contact emails for the people who
Yes.
attended tonight? Because what
Yes.
I'll do is,
Yeah.
anyone interested in taking part in the project up in Headford or even down in Clonakilty,
Yeah.
I can kind of send details on, and
Okay. Yeah.
that'll be taking place next January pretty much. We'll be
Okay.
initiating it, anyone
Okay.
interested. But I send all those resources to you, and I'm sorry if I'm sorry my laptop cut out a while ago. It's an inconvenience,
Oh,
but I
no
hope
problem.
I've
These things
very good
happen.
resources anyways, and I
Yeah.
hope I made everything reasonably simple.
No, it was fantastic, and it's great to see the visuals of the pruning. And I think there was so many questions related to that. So it was great to be able to focus on that for this
Yeah.
talk. And just wish you all the best with your heritage mapping, the apple mapping
Thanks,
project.
Charlie.
I
And
hope it's first of many.
thanks very much for
Yeah,
inviting me today.
yeah,
I'm delighted that
great.
you had a good
Thanks,
turnout.
Gillian. We'll probably be asking you again. So thank you very much.
Yeah,
And
we'll
just
contact.
yeah, great.
Cheers.
Good night, everybody. Thank
Yeah, good night, everyone.